Chapter 6. A Worrisome Journey. "Some class, eh?" the attendant remarked to Nancy as she came back to her car. "Must be millionaires." Or racketeers, Nancy thought. As soon as her gas tank was filled, she paid the bill and hurried back into the lunchroom. The girls had already been served. "What took you so long?" Bess asked. "Another car drove up and I had to wait," Nancy answered simply. She sat down, thoughtfully eating her sundae. "What's the matter with you?" George demanded presently. "You've hardly said a word since you sat down." Nancy looked around and saw that no one was seated near their table. In whispers, she told what had happened. "Oh dear," said Bess. "Maybe that man on the train found out where we're going and is on his way there too." "Don't be silly," George chided her cousin. "If he's in some shady deal around River Heights, he'd be glad to have our young sleuth out of the way." Joanne looked a bit worried, but all she said was, "I think we'd better be on our way. I have to be there before that man comes to buy the farm. I must talk Graham out of it." The girls finished the sundaes and picked up their checks, but Nancy insisted upon paying. "I want to break this $20 bill Dad gave me," she said. "I've spent most of my smaller bills." The waitress changed the bill for her without comment, and the girls left the lunchroom. As they climbed into the car, Nancy glanced anxiously at the sky. There was a dark overcast in the west. "It does look like rain over my way," Joanne observed. "And we leave the paved road and take a dirt one about 5 miles from the farm." "I'm afraid it's going to be a race against time," Nancy warned, starting the car. "A bad storm on a dirt road won't help matters at all." The girls now noticed a change in the countryside. The hills had become steeper and the valleys deeper. The farms dotting the landscape were very attractive. Nancy made fast time, for she was bent on beating the storm. The sky became gloomier and overcast. Soon the first raindrops appeared on the windshield. "We're in for a downpour, all right," Nancy declared grimly as she turned onto the dirt road. Soon there was thunder and lightning, and the rain came down in torrents. "Listen to that wind!" Bess exclaimed. "It's enough to blow us off the road." The next minute, everyone groaned in dismay, and Nancy braked the car. Across the road stood a wooden blockade. On it was a sign. "Detour, bridge under repair." George read it aloud in disgust. An arrow on the sign indicated a narrow road to the right. As Nancy made the turn, Joanne gave a sigh. "Oh dear," she said. "This back way will take us much longer to reach Redgate." The detour led through a woodland of tall trees. Daylight had been blotted out entirely, and even with the car's headlights on full, Nancy could barely see ahead. Again, she was forced to slow down. Suddenly, a jagged streak of lightning hit a big oak a short distance from the car. It splintered the tree. "Oh!" screamed Bess. "This is terrible." Nancy pretended to be calm, but she really was very much worried. She decided it would be safer to get away from the dangerous line of trees, any one of which might crash down on them. "How long is this stretch of woods?" she asked Joanne. "Oh, perhaps 500 feet. We'll have to chance it." Nancy drove as quickly as she dared in the darkness. The girls breathed sighs of relief when open country was reached. But Joanne's fears were not yet over. "Watch out," she advised. "There's a sharp, treacherous curve very soon, just before we take the turnoff for the farm." By now the brief storm had moved off to a distant sky, and it was easier to see the boundaries of the slippery road. Nancy rounded a curve, but as the car took the turn, the wheels on the right side sank into the thick mud of a ditch, bringing the car to a lurching halt. The unexpected mishap stunned the girls for a moment. Finally, Bess found her voice. Now what? Nancy endeavored to drive the car out of the ditch, but it was useless. Well, she sighed, we may as well jump out and examine the car. Keep your fingers crossed. They found the convertible at a lopsided angle. The right wheels, however, were firmly anchored by the mud. The 4 girls attempted to push the car, but without success. I'll look in the trunk, Nancy said, to see if there's something to help us. Nancy found 2 pieces of heavy burlap. Bess and George put them in front of the 2 back wheels for traction. Then they gathered and broke up some brush to make a mat for each tire. I hope this works, Joanne said, taking her place to assist in pushing the car. There probably won't be anyone else using this desolate road who could help us. I'm afraid we won't reach the farm in time. Nancy stepped into the car and started the motor, easing the gas and slowly rocking the convertible back and forth. Inch by inch, the tires crept forward, finally catching on the burlap and brush and rolling out of the ditch. We've done it, Bess shouted proudly. With a little outside help, George panted with a grin. The girls laughed from sheer relief. They started off again, more slowly than before. But they had gone only a mile when a new storm seemed to be coming up. In less than 5 minutes, complete darkness descended again, bringing another deluge of rain. Deafening thunderclaps instantly followed vivid forks of lightning. Of necessity, Nancy once more kept the automobile at a snail's pace. It was impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Anxiously, Joanne kept glancing at her watch. It's 5:15, she announced nervously. Nancy tried to assuage the girls' fears. This storm may have delayed your grandmother's caller. The wind and rain continued unabated. As the convertible climbed the brow of a hill, there was a brilliant flash of lightning. George, who was seated in front with Nancy, screamed, "Don't hit her!" Nancy jammed on the brakes so quickly that the rear of the car skidded around sideways in the road. "Who?" she demanded, horrified. "The woman in the road! Didn't you see her? Maybe she's under the car." Heartsick, Nancy jumped out one door, Bess another. They peered under the car, alongside it, in back of it. They could see no one. "Are you sure you saw a woman?" Nancy inquired. Just then, another streak of lightning illuminated the sky, and Bess called out, "There goes someone running across that field!" Nancy glanced quickly in that direction and saw the running figure of a woman. At that same moment, the woman looked back over her shoulder, revealing a thin, haggard face. Nancy judged her to be in her early 50s. All 4 girls stared in mystification. Nancy and Bess returned to the car, and the journey was resumed. "Why would any sane person be walking in such a storm?" Bess spoke up finally. "She's headed in the direction of the cavern," said Joanne, and explained that they were now nearing the farm. "Maybe she's one of those strange people over there." Nancy and her friends were immediately curious. Before they could ask what Joanne meant, the car reached the crest of a steep hill, and Joanne cried out, "There's Redgate Farm!" She pointed to the valley below them. The storm had let up, and the sun was coming out. The River Heights girls could clearly see the 40-acre farm, with its groves of pine trees and a winding river which curled along the valley. Everything looked green and fresh after the rain. "It's beautiful!" exclaimed Bess. "And cool, and peaceful," Joanne added excitedly. "Don't count on much relaxation with Nancy around," George advised their new friend. "She'll find some adventure to occupy every waking hour." "Yes," Bess agreed. "Adventure with mystery added." Nancy smiled. She reflected on the 2 mysteries she had already encountered: the unsolved case of the blue jade perfume and the strange code. As the car descended into the valley, the girls caught a better glimpse of the farm with its huge red barn and various adjoining sheds and the large rambling house, partly covered with vines. There were bright red geraniums in the window boxes and a freshly painted picket fence surrounding the yard. Nancy stopped the car in front of the big red gate which opened into the garden. "Oh, I hope it's not too late," Joanne cried as she sprang out to unlatch the gate. End of chapter 6.